Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day indeed. This is your neighborhood sensei Fouché, and I always begin my shows by first strongly suggesting, because a lot of folks don't like being told what to do, true indeed. So moving forward, I most emphatically implore for all of you beautiful, wonderful, self-loving, worthy individuals to stay woke. But in the process, never get all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you take all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change, when and if necessary, to relax. And always, always, always be prepared to take those notes. And I am a very consistent note taker. Taking notations is probably one of the things I do best in these current days as opposed to younger yesterdays when I was more generic dumb. You know what I'm saying? And I find myself seeing a lot of impulsive people, and I still do that on occasion, and I'll immediately correct myself, once I recognize the higher level of my impulsiveness in certain moments, instead of being more in notation and being in most specific reference. And I always implore for anyone that's providing information, like, do fact checking, because you're out there promoting and throwing around propaganda based on emotions as opposed to stated fact or noted reference. You know what I'm saying? And you could easily be diffused in any argument just by the fact that you really had no clue of what you were following, what you shared, but the specific details behind what is really going on, as opposed to just sharing and listening to gossip. You know what I'm saying? And information is all good. How you use that information, you have to be extremely careful. And I prefer to be more careful because I don't want to be caught out there and somebody just happened to call me out like, yo, dude, what was you talking about? Like, that wasn't factual. You know what I'm saying? Because my thing is no different than the guy that was assassinated about a month ago, prove me wrong. You know what I'm saying? And that's the one thing that I'll take from that specific person is, I want someone to prove me wrong. Like, do the research. Come to me with documented facts that is authentic, not fabricated. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, excuse me for the past 2 weeks. I haven't recorded a new show, and normally I record every week. I felt extremely exhausted physically. I don't want to state how long I've been going in as far as different types of work, hobbies such as this, including my earning income aspect of the day, my duties as a parent, as a father. I'm so intense into a lot of different applications, including studying and learning all of this information that I'm sharing with all of you chosen audience members. I put a lot of work into anything and everything that I commit myself to. You know what I'm saying? And I always talk about, finding those moments to decompress and relax, and I had to tell myself for a few days, and I didn't anticipate the wait extending to the point that it did. Like, I was ready in my mind to record a show probably by the 4th day after I realized, how tired I was, physically, psychologically. It's just so much intensity that goes again into every single day, and the itemization of a lot of different things that I'm involved in. So I told myself I needed a little bit of time off, and I have so many clips that are already prepared. I really wasn't sweating it, other than the fact that I don't want to leave any of my consistent viewers and listeners, I didn't want to leave you out there like, I just decided to not do this anymore. Like, forget about that. Matter of fact, I had to create an alternate or something, an additional podcast to cover my more personal thoughts. So look out for Chop It Up with Sensei Fouché. You know what I'm saying? I already transferred the last conversation that I did, which was POTUS Donald John Trump declares war on America. Like, I switched that over to the Chop It Up with Sensei Fouché because it was way more personal as opposed to informative. And I did find myself in the last few conversations, because of the heightened tension that's going on here within these states of America, with all of the political aggressiveness that has been transpiring. It has really heightened my frustration as well as my expressiveness towards sharing my thoughts and feelings on these happenings, and these different legal and political avenues that we're being directed towards. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole thing for me about, again, stay woke, is to, stay concentrated, focused, and informative into the information. And I really want this specific podcast to stay in line with being extremely informative. And if I want to get more personal and emotionally invested into a specific social topic, then we're going to chop it up on the other line with Sensei Fouché. So, be on the lookout for those episodes, And I also have the WeWag with the Whenever Was America Great Again. Like, I have those conversations ready to go as well, as far as information, documented and factual. And there's some things that have happened that is going to be included into the reference of my next episode with that topic title, Whenever Was America Great Again. So, look out for that. That's going to be coming up. Also, I was hoping I could have the introducing album from Sensei Fouché available this month, but even though we're going through the mastering process, and I should have my last mastering session with my vocal engineer this upcoming weekend, and I should have all of the tracks prepared to load up and submit for an early March release. So I'm going to do 2 releases next year. One is going to be early March, and I'm currently working on the 3rd follow-up to the initial or the introductory album, which was Patient XY1973 330311. Just check into the homepage and go. Matter of fact, I'll tell you right now, because I'm right in front of my computer. So yeah, when you go to the homepage for my Sensei Fouché, just click on the links, and you'll see all of the links to the lyrical projects, the NNMP instrumental sites, to link up to those sites. So, support those platforms as well. I would greatly appreciate it. I want you to be authentic. I want you to like the material, not just support it just because, you dig Sensei Fouché in some form or fashion. I want you to authentically gravitate and feel, the music and the vibe. And I would be most honored if you were to subscribe and support those alternate platforms as well. And what we have been doing, and we're almost at the end, is following this fantastic novel by Lindsay C. Gibson called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Was your parent difficult, immature, or emotionally unavailable? If you grew up with an emotionally immature, unavailable, or selfish parent, you may have lingering feelings of anger, loneliness, betrayal, or abandonment. You may recall your childhood as a time when your emotional needs were not met, when your feelings were dismissed, or when you took on adult levels of responsibility in an effort to compensate for your parents' behavior. These wounds can be healed, and you can move forward in your life. I did it, and if you looked up scumbag in an encyclopedia or dictionary, there would be my face, the poster child for generic, dumb, stupid. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely get it. I definitely understand, and that's why I'm sharing these itemized references from these professional topic writers to educate the insecure and the uncontrolled. And we have other books that are lined up right behind this one once we finish this. And I think we're going to wind up breaking this chapter 10 down into 2 different parts. I thought I might be able to do it in one segment in our last conversation to this book, which was How It Feels to Live Free of Roles and Fantasies. We just finished up part 2 from that on the 29th of September. So, chapter 10, How to Identify Emotionally Mature People. And we spent so much time studying to the deepest degree, itemizing through the specifics of immaturity, that by this point, it should be easy to recognize mature, because mature is everything opposite that we've covered up to now. And I strongly suggest for new viewers to go back in order to fully absorb the completion that we're gonna fall into of this wonderful novel. How to Identify Emotionally Mature People Again, Chapter 10. And we're going to probably go through half of this in order to have comfortable time to cover things and not feel rushed. You can reclaim your emotional freedom by honoring your true self in your relationships with your parents and others, setting limits and acting on your own behalf. And if I didn't state it before, which I'm pretty sure that I didn't, I replaced the word parents for people, because your parents is just a specific label of person to you or your fellow siblings. To anyone else, they're just an association or just, a random person. No different than you being able to apply this to not only the people that you're close to, but strangers as well, which happen to be people of close relation to other people. Unfortunately, adult children of emotionally immature parents can be skeptical that a relationship could enrich their life. Instead, they tend to think that rewarding relationships are a pipe dream, too good to be true. And beneath this thought, they typically fear that other people won't be truly interested in who they are. These negative expectations perpetuate emotional loneliness, but you can change them once you are aware of them. Basically, you've been so damaged that you don't believe that there is the possibility of a good relationship, or that there are good people out there. Like, you just label everybody bad and corrupted because of how much has happened to you, but you have to take ownership too because of the relationships that you chose to have and keep. And you rejected, more than likely, relationships that were more productive to your betterment because you were so invested in being unreliable, wishy-washy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you wanted to beat to your own drum, but never be consistent in how you patterned your beat. And I hope that reference made sense to a lot of you listeners and watchers and followers. All humans share the primitive instinct that familiarity means safety. You think that just because you're used to them, that, you feel safe enough. But why should you just feel safe enough? Because that tells me, when you use the word enough, that you still feel like you have to watch your back or watch what you say and how you interact with specific types of people. And you should be most aware for your own feelings, but you should be very trusting in the relationships you do have. And if you aren't as trusting as you should be, then you need to reevaluate, who you kicking it with and who you're connected to. Being realistic and reliable may sound humdrum. Man, and I mentioned reliable before, and trust me, I didn't look ahead. But nothing can take the place of this basic soundness. Think of this first cluster of traits as the physical layout of a house. It won't matter what color you paint the walls if the structure is awkward to live in. Good relationships should feel like a well-designed house, so easy to live in that you don't notice the architecture or planning that went into it. And every relationship is a process. But if you find yourself struggling emotionally in having that relationship, then you probably need to reevaluate who and what you're connected to. Because as much work as a relationship is, it shouldn't be extremely difficult, partisan, or one-sided. Almost like, Atlas holding that big old globe on his shoulders by himself. He's on one knee. He looks all strenuous. The weight of the world, you shouldn't have to carry that by yourself. And the people that you trust to carry that weight along with you in some regard of percentage, whatever that may be, it shouldn't be that difficult for you to share in an engagement as opposed to it being extremely difficult and draining. Although they'll work to change what they don't like, emotionally mature people acknowledge reality on its own terms. They see problems and try to fix them, instead of overreacting with a fixation on how things should be. If changes aren't possible, they find a way to make the best of what they got. Mature people are able to adapt. They're not just kind of stuck on stupid, to state it like that. They are solution-oriented as opposed to problem-based. And I know you've heard me mention that reference a lot. The ability to think, even when upset, makes an emotionally mature person someone you can reason with. Regardless of whatever is going on, even though you're upset, you are in control and focused in your feelings, not just being outlandish and very vengeful, full of rage. So let me read again in case I kind of forgot my place. The ability to think, even when upset, makes an emotionally mature person someone you can reason with. Because they can think and feel at the same time, it's easy to work things out with such people. You know what I'm saying? Because they're more realistic into understanding what is as opposed to what they want things to be. They're people of compromise instead of very selfish and self-absorbed. They don't lose their ability to see another perspective just because they aren't getting what they want. They also don't lose track of emotional factors when addressing a problem. A liar, it's easy for them to forget, their point into whatever they were referencing from, topic of argument. You know what I'm saying? But someone that is emotionally mature, like, they're so authentic that it's easy for them to remember and stay on topic and stay in line of being solution oriented as opposed to problem based, being calm and resolved as opposed to over emotionally reactive. Because emotionally mature people have an integrated sense of self, they usually won't surprise you with unexpected inconsistencies. They're people you could count on. You know what I'm saying? Not the cornballs where you don't know what you're going to get every single day, like you in the movie Forrest Gump and his mama handed you a box of chocolate. You can count on them to basically be the same across different situations. They have a strong self, and their inner consistency makes them reliable custodians of your trust. Emotionally mature people are realistic enough to not be offended easily and can laugh at themselves and their foibles. And foibles just means, whatever their flaws are. And we're going to look that word up. Foibles. Foible. A noun. A minor weakness or eccentricity in someone's character. The weaker part of a sword blade from the middle to the point, which is the definition for fencing. But the common definition is a weakness or eccentricity in someone's character. And eccentric, to look that up as well, so all of you viewers can be totally in line of definition. It's a noun, eccentric, unconventional, and slightly strange. So again, because emotionally mature people have an integrated sense of self, they usually won't surprise you with unexpected inconsistencies. You can count on them to basically be the same across different situations. They have a strong self, and their inner consistency makes them reliable custodians of your trust. Emotionally mature people are realistic enough to not be offended easily and can laugh at themselves and their foibles. They aren't perfectionists and see themselves and others as fallible human beings doing the best they can. Like basically, you're not perfect, but you attain or try to sustain a line of perfection, even though you know that you're an imperfect body. Taking things too personally can be a sign of either narcissism or low self-esteem. Both traits cause problems in relationships because they lead people to constantly seek reassurance from others. In addition, people who take things personally often feel that they're being evaluated, seeing slights and criticisms where they don't exist. This kind of defensiveness consumes relationship energy like a black hole. And as smart as I attain to be, I know I still do a lot of dumb things. And I'll call myself a dummy in a minute. Not to think that I am a completely dumb and unintelligent person, but I'm comfortable in the fact that I do make mistakes and I'm not perfect. And I'm going to call myself dumb. And I'll tell somebody else, like, pardon me, I was dumb for a moment. And if I did do something dumb and they, made a light-hearted reference into how dumb I was, like, I could laugh along with it. I'm not going to take it extremely personal unless you are malicious in trying to attack me. And I'm not going to be over personal, but I am going to feel disrespected. And then I'm going to have to draw that nice fine line in the sand to let you know where the boundaries are. In contrast, emotionally mature people understand that most of us can put our foot in our mouth at times. If you say you misspoke, they won't insist on a post-mortem to uncover potential unconscious negativity toward them. They can see a social gaffe as a mistake, not a rejection. They're realistic enough to know they're realistic enough to not feel unloved just because you made a mistake. Like a mature person would realize that you misspoke on something that they were referencing to you personally, and they might have said something not being grammatically correct. And you knowing them, you could just realize or just excuse it as something that was a mistake that wasn't on purpose. You know what I'm saying? And you're not going to get over emotionally invested into those misspoken references or statements. Emotionally mature people that treat other people as individuals worthy of respect and fairness. Let me read that over. Emotionally mature people treat other people as individuals worthy of respect and fairness. All of the following traits reveal their competitive orientation, which will come out in how they treat you. You'll have the feeling they're looking out for you, rather than being solely focused on their own best interests. You might think of these traits as being like the elements of a house's infrastructure, such as heating and plumbing, that are essential to making it habitable. Emotionally mature people are innately courteous because they naturally honor boundaries. They're looking for connection and closeness, not intrusion. For emotionally immature people, on the other hand, getting close to someone often leads to taking the person for granted. They seem to think closeness means manners don't matter. Line in the sand, boundary line. Emotionally mature people will respect your individuality. They never assume that if you love them, you'll want the same things they do. You'll respect someone as an individual as opposed to trying to make a carbon copy of yourself. Instead, they take your feelings and boundaries into account in any interaction. This may sound like a lot of hard work, and I'm going to say that it isn't, because when you're authentic, it's really not hard. It's genuine and it's easy. Emotionally mature people automatically tune in to how others are feeling. Real empathy makes consideration of other people second nature. An important gesture of courtesy and good boundaries in relationships is not to tell partners or friends what they should feel or think. Another is respecting that others have the final say on what their motivations are. In contrast, immature people who are looking for control or enmeshment may psychoanalyze you to their own advantage, telling you what you really meant or how you need to change your thinking. This is a sign that they disrespect your boundaries. Emotionally mature people may tell you how. Again, emotionally mature people may tell you how they feel about what you did, but they don't pretend to know you better than you know yourself. If you were neglected by emotionally immature parents during childhood, you may find yourself willing to put up with unsolicited analysis and unwanted advice from others. You're used to being bullied in conversations. You're used to being told what to do and how to think. So then when someone else makes the most strongest of suggestions or forceful suggestions to be more specific, you're going to submit instead of, hold your own ground and be able to go through your own processing sequence in a healthy manner and come up with constructive solutions. This is common among people who are hungry for personal feedback that shows someone is thinking about them. But this kind of advice isn't nourishing attention. Rather, it's motivated by a desire to be in control. Or you used to being controlled. You're used to being controlled, or someone else is used to controlling other people. Fairness and reciprocity are at the heart of good relationships. Emotionally mature people don't like taking advantage of people, nor do they like the feeling of being used. They want to help and are generous with their time, but they also ask for attention and assistance when they need it. They're willing to give more than they get back for a while, but they won't let an imbalance go on indefinitely. They're very giving, but they're not gullible. If you grew up with an emotionally immature parent, you may face your own challenges with reciprocity, having learned to give either too much or not enough. Your parents' self-preoccupied demands may have distorted your natural instincts about fairness. If you were an internalizer, you learned that in order to be loved or desirable, you need to give more than you get. Otherwise, you'll be of no value to others. If you were an externalizer, you may have the false belief that others don't really love you unless they prove it by always putting you first and repeatedly overextending themselves for you. Emotionally mature people are usually flexible and try to be fair and objective. An important trait to keep an eye on is how others respond if you have to change your plans. That's a good example. Me, I'm going to be very understanding. And I don't even have to be vehemently mad at you. If I feel that, you're not reliable, then I'll just fall back. And I just won't really deal with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to frustrate myself by continuing to try to force a conversation, a feeling, or a relationship. Or, keeping in accordance to a schedule, an agreement. I'll just let you go, you know what I'm saying? And just leave it at that. I don't even have to be extended in my anger, you know what I'm saying? Maybe for the immediate moment, I'll be extremely disappointed, but I know how to move forward and brush that off. And you should too. Can they distinguish between personal rejection and something unexpected coming up? And that's in reference to people changing their plans. Are they able to let you know that they're disappointed without holding it against you? If you unavoidably have to let them down, emotionally mature people generally will give you their benefit of the doubt, especially if you're empathetic and suggest trade-offs or compromises to ease their disappointment. Like, you know you did wrong, and you're going to try to make up for not fulfilling that commitment or agreement. And that authenticity makes an easy compromise. You know what I'm saying? Most emotionally mature people can accept that changes and disappointments are a part of life. They accept their feelings and look for alternative ways to find gratification when they're disappointed. They're collaborative and open to others' ideas. And I always say, expectations lead to disappointments. When you create your own expectations of a person or a situation, then you are creating the probability and possibility of your disappointment more than the other person. They just create the action. But if you had a different thought process going into the situation, then you won't be as feel rejected. You'll just kind of chalk it up to, well, that figures, or that makes sense, or yeah, that's probably who they are, and good for me to know now, so I don't have to deal with that person so closely in the future, being that they followed through this way. When you forge a compromise with an emotionally mature person, you won't feel like you're giving anything up. Instead, both of you will feel satisfied, because collaborative, mature people don't have an agenda to win at all costs. You won't feel like you're being taken advantage of. Compromise doesn't mean mutual sacrifice. It means a mutual balancing of desires. In a good compromise, both people feel that they've got enough of what they wanted. In contrast, emotionally immature people tend to pressure others into concessions that aren't in their best interests, often pushing a solution that doesn't feel fair. They're very aggressive, they're very pushy, and they won't allow for you to think for yourself, or they won't try to assist you in how to process a thought. They'll just say what they think and tell you that you should do exactly what they say. Me, I'm going to strongly suggest before you come back, in more tears, and then I'm going to emphatically implore. But it's going to be your choice, not mine. And I can't be so close and emotionally invested knowing the probability that you probably won't follow through and you will be disappointed, and I don't want to be caught up in that tornado of disappointment. People who are unhappy, or people who are in unhappy relationships, often say things like, relationships aren't about compromise, right? But I can tell by their facial expressions that they aren't talking about compromise. They're talking about feeling pressured into doing what the other person wants. Real compromise feels different, as though your needs were taken into account even if you didn't get everything you wanted. Believe it or not, compromise can be very enjoyable, not painful, when you negotiate with emotionally mature people. They are so attentive and connected that it's a pleasure working things out with them. They care about how you feel and don't want to leave you feeling unsatisfied, because they have empathy. They won't feel settled if you're unhappy with the outcome. They want you to feel good too. Being treated with such consideration can make compromise a rewarding experience. The sooner temper shows up in a relationship, the worse the implications. Most people are on their best behavior early in a relationship, so be wary of people who display irritability early on. It can indicate both brittleness and a sense of entitlement. Not to mention disrespect. People who have a short fuse and expect that life should go according to their wishes don't make for good company. If you find yourself reflexively stepping in to soothe someone's anger, watch out. There are enormous variations in how people experience and express their anger. More mature people find a sustained state of anger unpleasant, so they quickly try to find a way to get past it. Me, I always say, I'm not trying to go back to hard drugs and alcohol. Like, being stressed, that's not what I'm interested in. So I need to figure out way sooner than later how to move past that strong feeling, because stress, we can't have a relationship. I'm divorced from stress. And of course, I lost my place. Less mature people, on the other hand, may feed their anger and act as though reality should adapt to them. With the latter, be aware that their sense of entitlement may one day place you in the crosshairs of their anger. People who show anger by withdrawing love are particularly pernicious. Having harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle way. And it's an adjective. So again, less mature people, on the other hand, may feed their anger and act as though reality should adapt to them. As opposed to them compromising, they think that the whole world revolves around them. Everything should go their way because, they believe that they're more important than everybody else. With the latter, be aware that their sense of entitlement may one day place you in the crosshairs of their anger. People who show anger by withdrawing love are particularly pernicious. There go that word again. Having a harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle way. The outcome of such behavior is that nothing gets solved and the other person just feels punished. In contrast, emotionally mature people will usually tell you what's going wrong and ask you to do things differently. They don't sulk or pout for long periods of time or make you walk on eggshells. Ultimately, they're willing to take the initiative to bring conflict to a close, rather than giving you the silent treatment. In addition, people sometimes need space to deal with their feelings on their own first. And I'll read this last paragraph before we end. Emotionally mature people have a secure sense of self. They don't feel threatened when other people see things differently, nor are they afraid of seeming weak if they don't know something. Me, I always say, tell me if I don't know something, I'm not going to be ashamed. I'm going to tell you that I don't know. And either in the next process, I am going to find out, what I need to know, you know what I'm saying? Or I am going to do some extreme referencing before giving any kind of an opinion to you, or point you in the direction of somebody that I know who would be better in being informed or being knowledgeable to what you need to know. I'll point you in the right direction as opposed to tell you something wrong or try to point you in the wrong direction. And any mature person would do the same thing and not feel ashamed in not knowing, but being authentic and honest in what they tell the confused person. So when you have an insight to share with them, they listen and consider what you tell them. They may not agree, but thanks to their natural curiosity, they'll try to understand your point of view. So again, from the beginning of the paragraph, emotionally mature people have a secure sense of self. They don't feel threatened when other people see things differently, nor are they afraid of seeming weak if they don't know something. So when you have insight to share with them, they listen and consider what you tell them. They may not agree, but thanks to their natural curiosity, they'll try to understand your point of view. Men are especially prone to rejecting a partner's input, since they're socialized to be self-assured and to resist undue influence. When this cultural training goes too far, it can get in the way of harmonious reciprocity in intimate relationships. However, there's no gender corner on this market. Plenty of women also refuse to be influenced by anybody and can be just as rigid as any man. Whatever the gender, unwillingness to consider someone else's point of view indicates emotional immaturity and a rocky road ahead. And we're going to leave our reading right there. And I'll probably introduce that introduction from the last paragraph when we continue into our second conversation. And I'm not going to keep our exit too long. I really enjoyed getting back into the moment of conversation. And at the end of this recording, I wound up being a little stuck into a thought and trying to find the right word, you know, when it comes to being knowledgeable, educated, well learned. You know, those were words or references that I was searching for in a stuck thought, you know what I'm saying? But we got through it, and I hope that you was able to evolve in some of the itemized references that we shared. I hope you were able to absorb some really good tools and information to help move further forward into being comfortable as opposed to insecure and afraid. We want you to be brave and strong and very secure in who you are, how you feel, and how to deal and treat other people. On that note, let me just check out before I start talking too much at the end of this program. So I'm going to state that this is your neighborhood Sensei Fouché, and I'll always begin by strongly suggesting before emphatically imploring to all of you beautiful, wonderful, self-loving, and worthy individuals to stay woke. And in the process, remember to never get stressed out. Make sure you take all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change when and if necessary, to relax. And always, 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 always be prepared to take those notes. Don't be a dummy. Don't sound like a dummy. Don't move like a dummy. You know what I'm saying? Cut the strings attached to you. And, always be prepared to take those notes. You know what I'm saying? Be smooth in unity until our next conversation. 1.